Okay, so thank you, Casey. Please, we look forward to your presentation and introduction of yourself. Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Casey. I came from Nepal, and I was in the security. I served the National Army for 25 years, and then life had another turn, and then I moved to the United States. And still I'm with administration and security business here. And also I'm also a community activist on disaster issues in Los Angeles. So with that background, I've been with AUSN for a couple of years, and I'm privileged to be a part of it to quench the thirst of this, what you call education and wisdom. And then we've been achieving a lot, being a vibrant community. So with this short background, I want to take you to my presentation. This is just a presentation which will form a basis of my thesis I'll be preparing shortly. So the topic of my presentation today is disaster resilience through communication and civil-military cooperation. This is just some pictures that I've included just to, it's a kind of a warm-up that to show that I served in the United Nations in 3 different tours of duties in the Middle East and Africa, where I saw the humanitarian crisis in depth. So, and we had to respond to that as well. Well, a little background about disasters. So disasters are a situation of large-scale damage, and we know an injury and death of natural or man-made that overwhelm the local resources and often necessitates external aid. That is, if it necessitates external aid, then we kind of come to a conclusion that there's going to be a disaster. And around that time, decision must be made about who received the limited resources, sometimes with life and death consequences. Restrictions may be required to limit the spread of disease or maintain security, but may also interfere with people's rights. So what I'm saying is, even in Los Angeles area or in the United States, we have heard doctors, having to decide, say they had a limited amount of ventilators, and the number of patients were more than the available ventilators. So literally they had to take out ventilators from patients and then put it to the other patients. So this is a very, very crucial decision they will have to make that forms within the line of bioethics. So that's while the action has contributed to developing the new field of disaster bioethics, much remains to be done to promote human rights and ethical action during disaster planning, responding, and research. So, an introduction: dealing with dealing with change or loss is an inevitable part of life. How we deal with this problem can have a significant impact in not only the outcome, but also the long-term psychological consequences, and philosophical as well. So as the scope of bioethics has become increasingly wider day by day, and covering everything is virtually not possible in one presentation, I've tried to focus the disaster, only the part of the disaster management that leads to that leads to resilience through civil-military cooperation. So what is resilience? And I have a very simple way of explaining resilience. If we put it in one place and crush it and leave it, it could bounce back to its original form. So this is what resilience is, in a very simple term, right? And our entire endeavor to be even go to a better level, not only come to that level, pre-disaster level, but go to a better level as well. So the whole focus to be on enhancing the nation's resilience to hazards and disaster, it's a laudable aspiration. And there's definitely a correlation between ethics and disaster. Ethics is a kind of a philosophical discipline pertaining to notions of good and bad, right and wrong, of our moral life in a community. Bioethics is the application of ethics to the field of medicine and healthcare, which is equally applicable during disaster as well. Ethicists and bioethicists ask relevant questions more than provide sure and certain answers. So the more you ask questions, the more you kind of generate questions, and then if this questions strike with one another, definitely you come up with so many brilliant ideas. So okay, I think about this. So disaster. Now we come to disaster risk communication. So there, as we know, evidently there are 4 stages of disaster cycle, and they are identified as mitigation and prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery. And communication between authorities and the public about disaster occurs in all stages of the cycle, with different aims at each stage. Communication is a potentially valuable way of avoiding and reducing harm caused by disaster. So this is a slide where you can see all these 4 phases in a cycle when it occurs. So it starts with mitigation, where we do some actions or act in a way where we think that we would not allow disaster to happen, but it happens anyway. So, and then when the cycle ends, it goes to the recovery phase, where restoring telecommunication infrastructure, providing lives, recovery, rehabilitation of other services as well. In a large-scale destructive event, one of the greatest challenges to public health workers and rescuing teams is to have stable and accessible emergency communication systems. However, little researches currently exist regarding the use of communication platforms and internet social networks for emergency response. As already mentioned unique geoclimatic position of Nepal and the US makes the country particularly vulnerable to natural disasters, and this applies to any other country in the world. Nepal has a vast peninsula of subcontinental size and is surrounded by sea on 3 sides, and has the Himalayan range on the 4th side, which has some of the tallest mountains of the world. So, as you know that Nepal is surrounded by India on 3 directions, and India is surrounded by Indian Ocean and Arabian Ocean, a little bit of Arabian Ocean, Arabian Sea. So we have natural disaster that is related to wind, water related, and further going down, climate-related disasters, that heat and water waves, global warming, which has been the everyday topic. Even if global warming has been not only it's a subject of disaster, it has become a subject or daily talked topic of even everyday politics. So mountain-related disasters are landslides, snow avalanches, geological disaster, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. Global warming, as we know, it has been the major killer in recent years, and that causes sea level rise and ozone depletion. So effects of disaster. It's common as that natural disasters have catastrophic effects on the place and people who are unfortunate enough to come within their field of strike. Disasters are not only do enormous damage, cause death, destroy food resources, spread disease and epidemics, and create unemployment, but they unsettle the entire rhythm of life of the affected community, state or country for a long time. The underlying question is, where does disaster gets intertwined with bioethics? The answer is not easy, but I deem it converges somewhere at resilience, the ability to bounce back at its normalcy at the fastest pace possible, restoring the dignity of human life. So if this resilience that gives lives back to these people, affected people, not only life, if it can give back the dignity, only then we kind of, we can be satisfied to the efforts or the endeavors that we made earlier. So this picture I just included to see the ethical cost. Do we as human beings allow this to happen? But it's happening every day. Anecdotes on some of the major disasters. Real life situation, on the 6th of August 1945, the US dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. Were the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki ethical? Between 90,000 and 166,000 people died in Hiroshima, and between 6,000 and 80,000 in Nagasaki. And it led to Japanese surrender to the USA and end of World War II. Was this ethically justified? This idea can be divided into two groups: those who believe that the bombings were morally justified, those who believe that the bombings were unethical. How do we know if a decision was ethically justifiable in history? Exploring the knowledge issue of different perspectives, the bombings can be viewed as either ethical or unethical. Economical cost. Since modern disasters, natural or human-made, occur more frequently, causing more deaths, affecting more people, and increasing economic loss. Understanding the nature of the ethical challenges specific to disaster settings is becoming more important to prevent ethical conflicts, or to be helpful to all parties to find the least negative option for action under severe condition. Global disasters in 2017 cost $306 billion, nearly double the cost of 2016. 2020 saw similar data. Economic cost. So, see, the estimated cumulative financial cost of the COVID-19 pandemic related to the lost output and health reduction is estimated at more than $16 trillion, or approximately 90% of the annual gross domestic product of the United States. Human cost. More than 1,300 people lost their lives to cyclone Idai in Zimbabwe. So we have got a lot of these data that show that there was a tremendous human cost due to disasters all over the world. So my personal assessment is that we could have saved approximately 50% of human and economic loss if we had learned the lesson well, because it recurs every other year, right? But the people tend to forget that, and we are the people, and we are the only creatures on earth who tend to forget things so fast. In 15-20 years, we kind of forget. We don't even think that even when this COVID, everything kind of came back to normalcy, we thought that there was no COVID at all in some other part of the country. So we tend to forget. That's why it has to be, the disaster response has to be kind of institutionalized in every level of the government in every country. Okay, this we're also I'm going to talk about this civil-military cooperation. Like, is it true that lessons reoccur, or why lessons are persistently identified? Why do we tend to forget? How effective the bioethics could play to help save ethical and economic cost. So this is a picture that I included because there was a mass flow of people, people moving from one place to another, and then who were doing what and who are going where. Those kind of things were not accounted for. That's why the United Nations had made an endeavor to make every level accountable to at least know the flow of people, migrating people going from one place to another. Otherwise, it would overwhelm the resources from one place to the other places. Military and the disaster. The increasing frequency of disaster often overwhelms civilian management structures and demands the engagement of the military. This has generated new problems and controversies. However, mainstream scholars in this field have so far failed adequately to address civil-military relations in disaster management. During the mega earthquake of April 2015 in Nepal, where 16,000 people lost their lives, Nepal Army was swift in deployment, saving further loss of life and property damages. The involvement of military is indispensable because of the following reasons. The need to incorporate national asset in time of crisis, the high degree of training. These are the people who are trained for the similar situation, search and rescue, element of swiftness with which military can operate in times of crisis, need of safety, security, including during armed conflict, neutral response to the gravity of disaster, international solidarity against the crisis, begins with the first responders at the local level and serves a secondary role in supporting disaster incidents. And then likewise, there is civilian authorities in disaster management. It's a multidimensional activity involving various authorities within the government. The involvement of civilian authorities is indispensable because of the following reason: because we got to have one window policy. It has the pool of major resources. That is because military happens to be only one tool among many tools, among probably 15, 20 tools. Military is only one tool, but very effective one. And civilians also have expertise over the subject matter, and involvement of non-state actors like NGOs, and also at times the foreign assistance is also included here. They are civilians. Civilian government being the ultimate entity for the crucial decision, they are all the time involved in disaster. To achieve progress, concrete proposals involving all stakeholders should address the following issues: resolving normative problems of civil-military cooperation, in improving operational approaches, minimizing conflicts or incompatibilities with humanitarian principles. What I'm trying to say by this is, there will be incompatibilities because during time of disasters, human rights agencies will be taking the disaster or trying to address the issue from human rights angle, from the human rights perspective, but the military will be very active operationally, and there might be a conflict of interest on those times and situation. So it's strengthening adherence to international standards. There's an Oslo guidelines on that, on civil-military relations is highly recommended. So disaster resilience optimization. Both civil and military share many common elements, particularly in the organizational area. operational actors intervene in both cases, police, firefighters, NGOs, etc. The problem of preparedness, logistical support, recovery, and disaster assessment are also often common. Yet in the end, each endeavor is driven by different operational logic and doctrine. Top-level support within the interoperability on operational level in civil-military relation is a precondition for achieving progress. Let's learn and not repeat the mistakes of the past. Challenge of the closer civil-military cooperation, conflicting organizational identities, and lack of common languages. Stakeholders and their roles in recovery objectives. So these are the stakeholders, that they are involved: local citizens, victims, media, business and other corporations, university and research institutions, non-profit agencies, contractor associations, and collaborative partnership. So this is the picture that I took of the earthquake 2015 April in Nepal. Took more than 16,000 lives. Yeah. So public works is also very important during disaster. As we do post-disaster damage assessment, and when we look to restore public water and sewer system, and when we seek to restore all the damaged infrastructure, public works become one of the major works that the government does. Federal emergency management agencies, there will be layers, like public information, congressional liaison, committee liaison. There are layers of other agencies that are working towards this end. There will be a state emergency operations center all the time, just to make sure that there's a one window policy. And there are disaster victims, and anyone or any person at any level from any walk of life could be a victim of disasters. And media is also very important. It plays probably, again, very they have a very crucial role to cover, identify, and also take the actions taken to the public. So they are the very important pillars during the disaster. And media is also one of the pillars that disseminate information to the public, and it could be in the form of print, radio, television, and internet. So these are the kind of the images are something that gives the gravity of the situation to the public, and also highlights the importance, and also suggests government agencies, including the military, as to where the focus needs to be directed at that particular situation. So what media does, informs large segments of the population, and it also elicits strong emotions, and also it provides accurate information. At times it doesn't provide accurate information, so we got to be very careful as to what kind of communication is being made there. And it uncovers issues and weaknesses, and it also gives an understanding of the recovery process, and sometimes also hinders the recovery process, media, as we all know, because sometimes if the focus is given to a wrong place, the right kind of recovery mechanism may not be taken to that particular location over time. So in the conclusion and recommendation, as we can't say if something is definitely right or wrong, we must rely on the process of making decisions based on ethical school of thoughts, such as utilitarianism. The fact that challenges to learning lessons persist despite regular experience with them is a serious concern. In today's environment, where the emergency response mission space is expanding dramatically to include broader homeland security responsibilities, the ability to capitalize on experience and improve capacity is ever more important. Effective communication underscores the ingredients like accuracy, comprehensive language and its tone, culture and diversity, and inclusion of technology. Communicating with vulnerable population must be considered thoroughly without any interest or political bias. I've included, I wanted to emphasize that point because, in the last, it's an ongoing COVID issue, the political dimension became so strong that countries just didn't want to accept the fact that there was COVID, and it was just due to political interest, not other than that. That's what I think. So if we just can't accept the reality driven by different interests, we are not gonna have a right answer to address the issue, the problem. So I think political biasness really hinders the endeavors of the government. And the other one, the last point, the very real consequences of failing to learn lesson is loss of lives and property. In short, bottom line is, if we don't learn these lessons, people are going to die again because we failed to fix the problem that killed people the last time. We didn't fix the problem last time. That's why we're gonna, and again, there will be more death in the future. So yeah, so here I come to this presentation. So if there are any questions, I will take. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Casey. So you mentioned the ethical framework of utilitarianism. So could you describe one or two of the haunting memories you have of having to make decisions that may have in disaster recovery, when you had limited resources, choosing where to dig and where not to dig, or where to prepare and where not to prepare? And also the UN, I think, often has limited resources as well.
Right. So I can remember, the dilemma that I so closely came across was in a situation like, there was a fire in the entire village, and the priority is, do we rescue babies or the elders? Right? And then both are important, and my resources were very limited, right? So what we had to do is, I had to, a majority of my resources were directed to save the babies, and that was the fact. As I said, I don't know which was ethically right or wrong, that I still can't say, but I had to save the babies because I thought that if the elders were by some chance they were a little stronger, and they could get out of that situation all by themselves, right? But babies, no, they definitely need someone's help, right? But if by not, it's not, majority, because you have to also divide the resources you have. So 50-60% of the resources were directed to save the children, and 20-25% were directed to save the elders. So in couple of situations, we always come on with this kind of situation, and so for the benefit of the majority, we have to adopt this kind of situation.
I have some questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So insofar as the media and the role of the media is concerned, in order to prevent, as you said, the mistakes, and to remember what it is like to be in a disaster, because I myself was very much involved in like broadcast media. So what kind of cooperation do you think would be necessary, given that the military has a very specific function and mandate in most governments, and in most situations, vis-a-vis the media, which may often be at odds
Right.
with government? Yes.
What I think is, handling the media is always very critical and sensitive issue in any country, in any situation, and especially when there is a disaster. The media always endeavors to get maximum information from the ground, right? And the
Of course.
yeah, even if they try to be at the ground zero, but like it's always the first responders, like the military will be there, and they're trying to elicit information from there, right? And some of the information is not all the time good if we give that information to the media, right? Because if I mean the fact, the ground on the ground, what happens is resources is, it's not that everyone gets the resource at the same time, right? And the media will, in order to sensitize the news, they will always try to find a place where there are weaknesses, right? So we got to be very careful to give a balanced kind of the information to the news media outlet, and it has to have a one window policy, and there has to be a dedicated spokesperson, I would say, who would channelize the information, and before giving out the information, it also checks the importance and the legality of what he says, because that would form the basis of so many things in the future.
Exactly.
Right. So these are the things that we should consider, and most importantly, media should also be educated as to how to give the best information, best possible information to the public, because it can be the negative or positive change in the society, because the incident that happened and the news that was projected can cause even the government to change.
Yes.
So this is how I think we should be very sensitive while dealing with the media.
Definitely. Definitely. Yes. Questions? Dr. Sheriff?
Yeah, in India, we have every year floods due to rain. That is every year, November, December, and many people, houses are lost. People who are living in the low-lying lives are lost. But whatever said, then how can what type of a preventive measures can be taken? Because some of the issues they have is that all those outlets where water has to flow has been covered by buildings. Builders have built their buildings on those places where water, lakes, everything has to be there. And one time the floods was so severe, boats were running onto the main roads. See, like a very busy area in one of the areas like Mylapore, where it is one of the busiest city center. Water level was running up to the level of first floor, and military has to apply the boats to rescue people. And this happens not one year, continuously it happens, whether it is in India as well as whether it is in Bombay, it always happens. And one of the causes they say is that 1 million plastic bags are thrown very haphazardly into the low-lying area. So this goes and blocks all the outlets of water, and then that also adds severity to that problem. Do you think any other suggestions that can be done to counter such situations?
Contain the flood situation, right, Dr. Suri?
Yeah.
Fine.
Monsoon floods.
It is always a problem.
Right, yeah. So, Dr. Suri, what I think is, we have to really think about flood. First, we have to identify what is the cause of the flood,
Where is it
right?
coming
In order to be able to address the issue, right? So generally, flood happens due to a couple of reasons, like global warming, right? Or or if it is a man-made issue, then it could be we're disturbing the natural course of the flow and not managing it. Yes, we tend to leave its course, the rivers flowing down from mountains or wherever it comes from. But yes, we can always manage it, and if we make the right kind of canals and give other management, bring infrastructures like dams and other things to regulate it, we can pretty much do it. Because in the United States you can see big the water canals they made, and then they prepare like it's like the size of a river everywhere. You can see it, right? And then that's how the floods are being contained. But you know what? They make it, but the flood never comes. and then again, after 20-25 years, it comes in a time when you never thought it, and then everybody becomes like the thing that exactly I covered in my presentation is we tend to lose the fact that there was a flood. And then we are not prepared in 20, 25, 30 years, and again it hits in the way that we never expected. So, having said that, when I talk about making the infrastructure to regulate the flow of water, but we got to be very what do you call this? We got to have a right decision when making big infrastructures like dams, because changing the course of water or disturbing the flow of water is also not always the answer, because big dams have caused even global warming. So that is a fact. I don't know the name of the dam, but it is so huge that the every year the global temperature is rising by I think 0.016 degree. So it's not a big number, but it's happening. So trying to regulate the flow of the water is possible. It's very much possible, and we have to do that. And in case, even after that, if there is any flood, then the response mechanism should be swift and strong, so that lives are lost. The lives are saved. And it's in the improving trend, because if you see Bangladesh and China, we used to hear like thousands and thousands of people, Yangtze River killing 1,000 people. Now, we rarely hear that. In Bangladesh, there used to be a lot of flood. Actually, people are managing with right kind of response, and it's very possible. Even like tree plantation. This could be one of the ways to contain water, right? So there are so many ways, and one has to have a holistic approach to address this issue. It is possible, Dr. Suri.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Are there other questions or comments? Reflections?
I talk about the military doctrines, how it can cripple or enhance maybe the performance in rescue tasks. I was thinking in Colombia. Colombia have switched from the national security doctrine that was, well, I don't know, it was a normal doctrine. It was a set of anti-leftist dogmas from the Cold War to the Damascus doctrine that, well, it has not worked. Science is a doctrine focused in fighting insurgents. It's a counter-insurgent doctrine. So in the last strikes and the last demonstration, well, the militarized police have found plenty of alleged counter-insurgents. So I want to know if there is any military doctrine focused in rescue and disasters prevention. Thank you.
So what is the question? If there
Yeah, so what is the military, what's the advantages of the military? And I think your slide 31, which I've put on the screen here, I think sort of summarize some of the advantages
Of the military.
of what the military brings to the rescue effort. That's what Manuel was asking.
what is the
What are the
benefits that
Yeah,
that's
what is-
the involvement of military brings?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what do they bring? And I think you summarized a little
Oh,
bit in
yes.
this slide.
Yeah, Manuel. So yeah, if you now see the slides, it's there. The benefit is, in every army, what we should understand is there's a disaster. The name could be different, but there's a disaster act, right? And based upon that, army gets involved in disaster because it has to be it has to be in the constitution or some kind of law where it provides for or allows military to get involved in disaster. Okay, without that part, military can be involved. So why it gets involved is it is the most trained body of people united in one place. Individual people, and then it's not only the experts with skills, but they have the resources as well. So if you have resources, if you are expert, if you have skill, but if you don't have resources, then you can't apply that skill to save lives. So they have skills, they have resources, and also what happens is they are trained group of people who willingly take the dangers. They involve themselves in a dangerous situation. They willingly do that because the civilian population might not be interested or not willing to take dangers at that time. But the military is also trained in a way that they kind of readily take dangers.
Yeah.
Because they're trained that way, right? So yeah, they due to so many reasons, the army gets involved, and also for the government, it is the only institution where they can tell their own one of their agencies to act or react on on any kind of disaster situation. So it's an easy tool, trained tool, skilled people. And then that is the only that is the kind of organization you look for during disaster.
I think I'd also add another example of the firefighters. So, for example, the last couple of years have been a challenge for the regular exchange of firefighters between California and Australia.
Right.
So usually they are alternate seasons, and there's large hundreds of firefighters travel between them every year. We may not always realize that, but these are professional firefighters and also some of the firefighting equipment. So it's a large investment of time and labor, and you don't always need these firefighters. In the wet season, you don't need them, but they have if they have international mobility. And another advantage of really large-scale disasters is international humanitarian efforts, because we don't know where an earthquake will hit. But when a magnitude 9 earthquake hits, it's or a magnitude 8, it's a catastrophe anywhere. So we need to have these international search teams on standby and able to move between countries, and they do move between countries. Because any one country, it's a very large investment if you're not actually using these skills. So having that as from an economic level and ethical level, it's also an advantage. Now, where do these people locate? Well, there's some humanitarian medical assistance, like MSF and others, but there's also this large group, I think, of military, which are quite important, because then we can rotate the resources around the world, and when we need them.
Definitely. I mean, but like, it's not only, that's why it's not only one entity that can address the issue. It's like, for example, we might need World Food Organization with a big, huge scale of storage facility in times of crisis, right? So that they can swiftly take that whatever is required to that point, right? But in disaster, what we have been seeing is, lately, we have resources, we have equipment, everything. But what happens is now these days, people now kind of know, but there's a kind of always develops a choke point. So every country is giving resources, everybody is sending their experts there, and then they are confined. Like in 2015 earthquake in Nepal, what happened was all the country wanted to give that, but the choke point was at the airport. They could not mobilize the thing out of the airport, or they could not even tell which consignment would they accept first. There's so many confusions, so it happened that part in itself is becoming a study now. Logistics, right?
I'm curious. So I kind of come from a sort of thought that the people who have witnessed war and witnessed destruction, and as you have on these photos, have the greatest sort of responsibility to speak to and bring awareness to others of the dangers and terrible horrors that war brings and disaster. And so just considering that and kind of tying into community education, I'm wondering what your thoughts might be on making efforts as military groups to go into communities and encourage actually community education in the realm of sort of self-sufficiency, in the sense of training in these skills, and why you've listed here why military is indispensable, and sort of providing or encouraging communities, municipalities to have even the most basic training to be self-sufficient in these times of emergency, when maybe there isn't necessarily time, for example, for the military to come in and provide the kind of response required. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and definitely it's a good thing to good thing to have military go into community and teach them like the basics. It's always good thing to do. But in advanced countries, it's kind of already there.
Yeah, sorry, I was speaking more to
like in America, they know the basics. There's always community activists always giving training to basic medical procedures, what there should be what an emergency kit should look like. Everything is there in place, right? But in other countries, not so developed countries, this is something they don't even know. I mean, this disaster comes to them,
Yes.
and then
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and then they're there. So, yes, you're right. I would, taking your advice, I would, because why military has to also be there is only for the reason that there should be some kind of interoperability thing that needs to be there, so that they kind of know the basic language or basic the way the military works,
Protocol.
right? And those kind of thing to give a sense of those kind of thing. Yes, military has to be involved, and with that, there has to be a kind of a local level, even exercise at the local level, involving all the other entities like NGOs, some acting like food representatives, providing food, some medical representatives. There has to be a team, including military, to give out those kind of education to the people.
Yeah, just speaking to your kind of premise, right? Why is it that we continue to have these same cycles, right? Why don't we learn the lessons of the past, or why is it that we forget as humans? And so, just meeting the intersection, right, of all these points you're making and education, and just considering where, right, community education might come in, right, to help encourage people not to repeat or learn from the past and not repeat the same mistakes moving forward, and providing them with tools,
Right.
Yes.
I forgot the name of the city here, Oklahoma or somewhere, and they probably Texas. They made the banks, the stone banks in Texas, I guess, and the what do you call the waves never was so big, and then they thought that it wouldn't happen. Then one unfortunate day it came.
Well, I mean, there's many cases. So it's if you make the flood banks on the side of a river or a seawall, the dilemma is how big should you make it? Coming back to 3/11, the tsunami in northeastern Japan, one village, the crazy mayor many years ago had made a 15-meter high seawall along the valley, and everyone thought he's crazy. But of course, that was a village that was not flooded by the tsunami, and anyone with less than 10 meters or less than 15 meters seawall, which was most, was washed away. And then, so afterwards, of course, many people went to his grave and prayed and thanked him for his crazy project to build this big seawall. But tsunamis are a sort of a distance, 60 years, 80 years, that grandmothers or great-grandmothers usually have taught, to run. But as we can see from the Indian Ocean tsunami, that knowledge had not been there. And now, of course, have built tsunami escape buildings in Padang in Indonesia. For example, everyone in the city is within 15 minutes walk from going to a major concrete building that's 3 or 4 stories high with a large ramp where everyone can walk up. And so this is an example of lessons. And another question then is, so in that sense, some sort of mandatory national service, conscription, would actually train all young people in emergency skills, if that was the focus. And Manuel's question there is there some army or military where the major focus is now disaster management rather than fighting wars? And I think probably the answer is yes, but what do you think?
I mean, the focus is
disasters rather than national security against the foreign army.
Yeah, that I think is probably true, because the people dying from actual conflict is getting less and less by every year. Actually, 2 armies fighting, and then people dying is lesser and less every year. People, right? There's a great amount of fear, world seems to be more unsecure, but actually in terms of actual death by war is diminishing every year. So what else? So what does army do is they prepare for this kind of situation. And yes, non-violent deaths are more than violent deaths now. So definitely it's prudent for the army to get prepared for this kind of situation, non-violent wars or disasters. Yes, definitely. Yeah, I would support that.
Maybe Sukran, do you have some comments from Turkey? I think this discipline is as one of the points that Casey has mentioned.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't attend full presentation, but it is very important presentation. Yeah, there is the many countries have encountered some disaster, earthquake, flood, fire. For example, now in Turkey, 28 places fired. The forest fire still continue, almost 40 days. They continue. It is very difficult, but military is a good organization and disciplined than the civilian. It is the real. And therefore, I think that military can help to prevent this disaster, and they can help the people because their discipline, the military discipline, is very important in the disaster time. And the civilian, and unfortunately not very, they can panic a lot. They did education, but to encounter this kind of events, disasters, and that time military is better every time because they live in a discipline.
Right.
And therefore it is good.
Yeah, they're trained to face the danger with discipline. That's right.
Yeah, sometimes, it is very dangerous. I know they are authoritarian, therefore it is not good. But the disaster or pandemic, this discipline is necessary, unfortunately.
Yes.
And they have the courage also. Therefore, it is important. Many people away from to disaster time. I lived in I have experience about the earthquake in Turkey, and the civilian talk a lot, but they run. That is the problem. But military, you cannot run. You should hide the people. That is the main difference, I think. That.
Right.
Therefore, military is good sometimes, not every time, but sometimes.
Not every.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Pro.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, there needs to be a frame within which you'll have to make sure that the army marches. You know, you have to give them the right, give them the track, and like if you don't give them the track, they go off track.
Sometimes.
Thank you, Pro.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or comments? I think it's a very interesting. I think it also, this role of. I've seen another couple of examples. By the way, I saw recently pictures of Van 2 days ago, Sukran, where Turkey, a city in Turkey, where Sukran is, because it's close to the Turkish-Iranian border, and a lot of Afghan refugees walking across from Iran. They walk across from Afghanistan through Iran into Turkey, trying to get there because. So in this sense, because of what's happening in Afghanistan with the Taliban, you need to. Anyone would want to escape, and so just again, the border guards need to be. These facilities of how to deal with refugees, refugee response. It's important. Sometimes the training.
No, but it is very suspicious about us. We don't understand because they are all of the male. They are young. There is no any between 18 and 30 years old. And what is this issue? We don't understand actually. Our government didn't give any real information. Why these only male and young people, not the old people?
Yeah,
there are no any girl, any woman.
Yeah, it's because Sukran, when the Taliban take over the area, all the men of that age have to join the Taliban to fight. They are killed. They can't.
Why don't go to the Pakistan, Iran?
Well,
all of them went to the Turkey.
No, well, they are.
What is the real reason? We don't know. They are some of the maybe Taliban members. We don't know. They say only we came here and we know that they paid the Iran government for each Taliban, these people, each refugee, 2,000 euro. And after that they came to Turkey. We are not sure. This refugee situation, we should think about it, because in Turkey they can start another rebellion, and now we have encountered some kind of small but rebellion also. What is their main aim? We don't know.
Yep. Yeah, thank you, Sukran.
That is the main problem. And we heard that almost 60 or 80 million people want to try to come to Turkey.
Yeah.
What is they don't want to war, they don't want to live in Afghanistan, but what we do, and this is another issue, their ideas, because we know that from Syria came many people. Some of the people some of the people related to their radical regional groups like the IŞİD, and they live in Turkey, and they bring. We cannot say all of the innocent people. And in Turkey we have catch some leaders of the IŞİD or the other radical groups.
Yep.
We don't know what is the problem.
Yeah, thank you, Sukran.
Turkey, our Erdogan said, come here, but all of the people are not happy, because we are a lot of suspicious about them, because all of the male, all of the young, and also another important issue, Afghanistan, you know that they product drugs. And after Afghanistan people, and in Turkey also transferred some drugs, etc. Now in Turkey, they sell also drugs. That is another issue. These people came from with their drugs, with their another issue. We don't know. That is we are not happy. We don't know. We are not safe in our country now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sukran. It's a bigger challenge of migration. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bigger challenge. Shukran. So what we need to remember is immigration or refugee are follow the pattern of what is it? They're just like water. They go. There's a term called gravity flow. So where it is easy for them to go, they go there. Number one, it's just like gravity. So number two is, at the highest level, at the political level, even before Americans left Afghanistan, Putin, do you remember Putin requested Biden to use their base to gather information on Afghanistan, because he already knew that there would be flow of refugees, and at the higher level, we would not. Sometimes general public don't know who is orchestrating or who is engineering the flow of refugee or immigrants. We wouldn't know that. Like, for example, in my country, there was a Bhutanese refugees. We certainly saw in our doorstep Bhutanese refugees, and in the middle there was India. How come one refugee from one country came to other country, passing the land of another country? Who engineered that? Right? So this kind of thing normally it can happen. We cannot deny the fact that some people are engineering the flow of refugees, but whether there is some kind of engineering or not in the flow of refugees, but it is like gravity flow. If they see that they can survive in some part of the world, they tend to move there.
Mm.
It happens.
Yeah, and we would do the same.
We would do the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there is an organization. It is not the innocent.
Yeah.
We don't think so. It is the innocent. And if Turkey nearby our European countries, and if the Turkey is changed like the Afghanistan, there is the one strong possibility now, because of the change our government and Syrian refugee and Iraq refugee, they are also belong to some groups, some radical religious groups. And after that, the European countries, according to me, do wrong policy. Because it is, if we have in trouble, the European countries will in trouble.
Yes.
And they don't know Roman Empire history. It is very important history. I love the Roman Empire, some measures, but I don't think so. They don't aware anything. They said, yeah, Turkey is good. You can go to Turkey, but there is the main problem to do peace in Afghanistan, in Syria. And in Turkey economy is collapsed, and Turkey have some political serious conflicts, and Turkey going to collapse, all of them. And after that, it started to other countries. Therefore, this is actually not the Turkey issue. The US and Russia, before try something to do in Afghanistan, but both of them failed.
Right.
Afghanistan is very complicated and geography, and these groups are not middle-aged people. More than what kind of people we don't understand, And for example, yesterday they killed a comedian, an actor, because of the Taliban killed him because of his joke. And they are killer. How can they left this country the killer? It is the problem. And to do, they try to a kind of political Islam, very dangerous. And we know that now Tunis is also have tried to change. But this is not only these countries' problem. It will continue the other countries. They don't aware. They only play. And after that, we cannot do anything, and we avoid, we left these countries. Therefore, Turkey seems will be actually be afraid of the rebellion. Rebellion will do with refugees, not the Turkish people. We know that.
Yeah, thank you.
These people is very problematic. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. It's a yeah. Refugee is it could be in most of the time could be source of insecurity for that particular.
Yeah.
country.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think today it's very interesting lecture because human security, the freedom from fear, freedom from want, freedom from need, also freedom from natural hazards. So these elements of human security are why the military, which is a usual national response to try to stabilize insecure societies from internal and external threats to their survival, is useful. Making an ethical system is very critical for us because they can perform a very important humanitarian response, and also the basic stability of a community depends on some level of stability, of security. So where we have this discussion, Sukran's been discussing the influx from different nations who are unfortunately failed states. So we can see Syria is a failed state, Afghanistan's perpetually failing in terms of its governance structure.
Right.
Can we blame the British, or can we blame the elder system, or can we blame all the countries around it utilizing it in exploiting their, whatever the source is, multiple sources, it's much more complex. But these questions of failed states are very difficult. We want states to survive. They may, in fact, some states in the past failed because of climate. Drought destroyed the Indus Valley possibly.
Yes.
And famines destroyed many parts of Africa, and we can see the Dust Bowl in the United States destroyed many parts. It led to long-lasting changes in this
I think
population structure.
drought destroyed Somalia for some time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And so we need this emergency response, and thank you very much for your presentation and approaches to developing it, and thank you everyone for the participation. It's been a very interesting session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We enjoyed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
I hope that Turkey can turn into the Afghanistan or Pakistan. It is a bit dangerous now.
Yeah, we hope not. God forbid not.
We should face, and after that, what we do, we don't know. I want to go in New Zealand. Could you please arrange for me or organize for me? I want to be refugee. I want to be refugee to New Zealand. It is my idea.
Thank you, Sukran. We'll try and do that.
Because we are really, really afraid. Yeah, it is not the joke.
Yeah,
We
I know.
are really afraid because this group a lot and they don't think human respect, etc., human rights, they don't care. Therefore, many people, we talk about what we do. And my country, my New Zealand, I want to be refugee with my family to go New Zealand. Please, Daryl, help me.
Thank you, Sukran. Well, New Zealand will be honored to have you. Thank you. Okay, thank you then. Okay, thank you everyone. See you tomorrow in class, and thank you for the April and Casey today for the lectures. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.